What is up, you guys? Welcome to Illumination Lab. My name is Justin, and today we'll get into episode 4 of Resculpted. In this series, we'll take a scene, image, or product and try to recreate it within Cinema4D and Redshift. Some recreations will be very similar, while others will fall short, but the goal is to see exactly how close we can get it. If you haven't seen episode 3, we modeled this scene here, so go check it out and see how we modeled the scene. And then today we will be applying the colors to the same exact kitchen here. So I'm excited for this one. This is going to be a fun one today. So without further delay, let's get into it. Alright, so hopping back into Cinema4D here, I brought in a few of these colors here. So we have a few of these colors like this copper here that I will begin to apply to a few of these models here. I did bring in a few different ones just in case we need to kind of play around with different colors or kind of see how colors interact with our models. But usually when I start this process, I grab a few colors here and then I start to apply them to our model here. And then depending on how it looks initially, I might go with that in general, or I might apply that color and then open up the node editor and kind of tweak the color a little bit. But this one's going to be tricky here on this island just because it is such a unique brass copper sort of look here. So we'll have to kind of play around with it to make sure that it looks pretty realistic without looking too 3D or too unrealistic here. So again, I'm just applying this copper here. Of course, we'll kind of bounce around between a few different colors just to see what we like. But to start off here, I'm just going to apply that copper and then also apply this marble as well. And so if you can see in the reference, both the countertop here, both on the island and on that far wall, and also on that other side too, we do have a marble countertop with a marble backsplash as well. So we'll just start to apply that there. I did bring in a few marbles already, plus we do have a few other marbles as well. But we'll just kind of apply these and kind of play with them and see how it goes here. So, and really with the backsplash here, if you look at the reference, it doesn't have a lot of veins going on. And so we'll have to play around with that to try and get something similar, but still kind of represent some of those veins as well too within the marble. Now applying this copper tone to this marble here, I can already tell without even looking at the reference that this is not what we should go for here. So let me just undo that real quick, and then we might need something a little lighter. Yeah, something like this will probably be good to start off with, and then of course, like I said before, we can always adjust it. But again, during these beginning stages, I want to make sure that I lay down something just to see what it's going to kind of look like. And sometimes that even gives me ideas for different colors in general, even though we do have a reference and we're directly trying to get the correct colors here. Sometimes I'll run into colors that I either didn't know about or didn't play with before, and so that kind of allows me to kind of know in the future if I'm working on something else to be able to apply that elsewhere. So, and then of course we have this really nice green plaster here that we will start to apply to our cabinets here. And so if you look at the reference, we do have this really nice kind of a dark green here. So this is going to be somewhat similar. Of course, we're going to open this up and kind of change the color slightly here, but this is a pretty good representation of the color we're trying to shoot for right now. So this is looking pretty good here. And then I'll just throw that green onto our bottom cabinets here. And so that's going to give us pretty good feel of what that's supposed to look like. So that is looking good. Of course, we will have to either individually apply this green to a lot of those different cubes that we see down there on the cabinets, Or, of course, if you've organize your object manager a little bit better, you can just apply this color to the nulls, and then it will just kind of fill in all that color to your nulls. So for example, if we had these cupboards here and it was all in one null like we should be doing, we can just apply that color to that null, and then it's going to apply that to all of its children. So either way, I guess you can do either one, but I'm sure creating a null and keeping your object manager organized, that's probably the best way of going about it. So all right, so we have this really nice white, I believe it's a plaster as well too, and then with this white it kind of gives us a nice glossy touch, and so that's not just going to help us achieve that color, but that glossiness will kind of help kind of bounce the light around the scene a little bit more. So that is going to be pretty nice there, but that will be pretty easy to just kind of replicate there, is just applying that white glossy color there. So that is looking good. And like I said, since we didn't organize our object manager, I'm just going to apply our green plaster to a few of our cabinets here. And so actually what I'll do is just open up this node editor, and then we're just going to just kind of play with this color real quick. So I'm just going to select this, grab this, and then we're just going to move this slightly over here to about there. Then I'm going to exit out here and then press play on our render view here. And yeah, that looks a little bit better. So hopping into our perspective, we can kind of see exactly how that looks. And so again, I'm just down by these cabinets here and just applying this green plaster color here. And then I'll just kind of hop up here and start applying this here. And so that is definitely one thing that I do during this process, is I'll just kind of hop around the scene. And so of course, I'm sure it makes sense a little bit more if I kind of stick to one area, but I tend to kind of hop around a little bit here, just because if something catches my eye, I just kind of go towards that a little bit more during the process. So another thing too is if you open up your settings within the Redshift render view here, there is some options for some LUTs as well. So you can click on LUTs and then kind of go down to all these different LUTs here. And of course that creates different color looks within the render view here. And so you can kind of achieve a few different looks or kind of play around with your color space in that manner as well too. Of course, Redshift comes in aces, I believe. And so you can always adjust your colors here, whether it's through LUTs, or you can go directly into the Redshift settings and change the color space there as well too. But just something I want to show you guys. We'll probably not utilize these LUTs today, but that's just something else that you guys can kind of play with if you are trying to get a specific look that could kind of tie everything together there. So pretty cool there. Next up, I'm going to apply this wood texture here. And so this one was cool because it had a nice chevron look as well, so you can kind of see those angles within that wood, and so that looks pretty good. I do have another wood texture here, so I'm just going to hit undo and see how this wood texture does. That one's okay. Let me just undo it and do the original here. Yeah, we might be going with this one today just because it gives us more of a look that we're going for here. And then of course our chevron is in the wrong direction, so I'm just going to rotate this and then adjust our floor here. Of course you can always adjust this a few different ways, but I feel like this one is slightly quickest here just by rotating the floor in whichever direction you're trying to aim for. So yeah, looking pretty good so far. Next up, I'm just going to delete some of these colors off of our lamps. And then I'm just going to apply this other color here, and immediately I could tell that is not not the look we're going for. So next up, I'm just going to shrink down this back wall area here. And the reason I'm shrinking this down is I just want to kind of assist in the mapping process here. If I have more of a elongated cube, of course, that's going to stretch out my material here. But like I said before, you can always adjust that several different ways. And then looking at the reference as well too, there are some more green cabinets over here. So I'm just going to bring over this green cube here and just kind of adjust it to our wall. So that is looking pretty good. It seems like I missed that last video, but of course we can always just go in and adjust. That's kind of what's so nice about a lot of 3D software programs is you can always really go back, so which is pretty helpful for sure. So next up, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to finish up some of these cabinets here. So I'm just applying this green plaster to a few objects within my object manager here. So I'm just going to do that here real quick. All right, so looking pretty good. I'm just going to kind of zoom in the camera here to the rest of our cabinets and start to apply the color. So I'll do that quickly here, and then we'll hop into another part of the scene here. And then just a few more over here and just kind of applying that plaster. And then same over here as well. And I think it's pretty fun that we can kind of see within the render view how we can just apply these colors here, and it has an immediate response within the render view. And so that's pretty cool to be able to kind of see that within real time here. So all right, so what I'm going to do is actually work on this backsplash area. And so what I'm going to do is just kind of move our camera a little bit more over to the middle area, right above the island here. And then we're just going to try a few different marbles here just to see if we can kind of get the same look that's in our reference here. So, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into our Redshift library here, and then they have a few different marbles here. So actually, I'm going to select this one, and we're going to bring this in, and hopefully this has a nice color that comes with it. So I'm just going to apply it here, and then just kind of change the projection. And yeah, that's not what we're looking for, so no worries there. Let's see here. Let me just go back to Redshift here, and then just kind of look here. I'm going to try this one out here, so we'll see how this one is. Now that marble looks pretty good, but that's a little too much. Let me try to stretch out the length here, see what that does. And then let me just kind of box this area in so we get a quicker response within the render view here. And then I'm just going to kind of play around with a few of these numbers here and see if we can get a similar look here. So again, we're trying to look for a nice reflective marble that has a couple of veins here and there, but really not so busy like we see in the render view here. So Yeah, I don't think this one, I don't think this one's gonna work out. So we might have to bounce to something else after kind of playing around with that. Let me just apply this one. And that's a little bit more of what we're looking for. Let me just adjust the length here. And then we kind of see that stretching out within the render view. So that's a lot better, just because we kind of see a little bit more whites, and then we see some of those veins kind of going across that area there. So that is probably what we're going to roll with for at least right now, but that is looking pretty good here. So we're just going to kind of hop back onto our island here and start to apply a few more colors here. And to be completely honest, this island's probably going to be pretty tough, but we'll we'll play around with it and try to really nail down the same look here. So, and then I'm just going to reapply this color here. And also what I'm thinking too is it would be interesting just to see what a area light or even the spotlight will do with this color. And so if we bring in a area light, let me just save it real quick. If I bring in, let's see. Yeah, if I bring in this area light and just kind of bring this over, what I'm going to do is just select our island here, and we're just going to include only our island here into our light here. And so hopefully with going into our lights, we could kind of change the color a little bit just to see if we can kind of bring in a little bit more orange through our light here. And then let me just bring that intensity down. But of course, playing around with different lighting and causing a lot of different highlights can kind of give us a specific look here. So as you see, as I'm rotating it, it can create these different highlights here. So what we'll probably do is just kind of play around with that. So if you're looking at the reference, you have these really cool highlights kind of in the front area of the island here. And so we'll probably have to kind of recreate that both on our islands and also on our floor as well too. So to achieve some of those highlights, what I like to do is just kind of use an area lights, kind of bring it up close, and make sure that I kind of reduce down the spread, or just kind of play around with the spread in general, just to try to achieve that same look here. So next up, I'm going to bring up Grayscale Gorilla here. And so we're just going to go in, and I'm just going to type in bronze. And so that brings up a few different colors here as far as the bronze goes. So hopefully this color here will look pretty nice within our island. And yeah, that's way too dark here and pretty flat. So yeah, we'll we probably won't use that ever. So next up, I'm just going to go back into grayscale, and then we're just going to try to look here to see if we can find anything else under metal. Let me see, under orange. I just type in orange here just because in our reference we do kind of have a more of an orange, brass, copper look here. So maybe one of these oranges can kind of help represent that a little bit better here. So I brought in about 3 of these colors here, so we'll just kind of apply these and kind of see how it interacts within our island here. I'm gonna apply this one here. That one's not bad. It is a little flat. We can always kind of adjust the glossiness of that, but let me see what this one does. Yeah, no, let's apply this one. And surprisingly, that is rather close to our reference. So we're just going to kind of bring this up here. And I'm just going to go over to these properties. And immediately I can kind of change that here, which is pretty helpful. So I'm just going to kind of bring that over. And it's more of about this color, actually, more of a like a brown sort of look here. And then just kind of play with this. Yeah, I think that is looking a little bit better here. Cool. So yeah, that looks pretty good. I will apply this to the rest of this island here. And that's actually a pretty good representation. Of course, it's not exactly it, but we're we're getting there. So especially because there's not a lot of light kind of interacting with the island, so we get this really flat look both on the front and the side, which looks just kind of off because of course this is a 3D item here. So anytime something looks flat like that, it's gonna look a little fake here. So of course, playing with our different lighting is going to kind of help us achieve more of a three-dimensional look here. So cool, looking pretty good so far. We're doing a good job here. Let me see what we should work on next. I'm just going to kind of apply that color here just to kind of finish that up. And then next up, I'm just going to apply this orange. And actually, what I'll do is just throw in this copper instead. I think this copper has a nice reflective look, and it's slightly different from that orange we just applied to it. So that is going to kind of help us achieve kind of a more reflective look, and also kind of help the viewer kind of differentiate the two different colors there, so you can kind of get an idea that those are cabinets, but that color is essentially helping the viewer kind of see the difference between the back ends of this and the actual cabinet portion of this too. So, and then I'm just going to bring in a light here real quick. I'm just going to rotate this. And if we're looking at the reference, what we're working on here is this really cool light that is coming across this area here between the cabinets and the islands. So I'm just going to push this light back and then kind of hone in this cone here, and then just increase the intensity and just apply a slight warmness to it. So sometimes with some of these scenes, I'll apply a slightly different color than just a white light, just to kind of bring a little bit more life into the light here. So I'm just going to kind of play around with the intensity here and the settings to see what we can get here. And so you can kind of see that there's a kind of a bright light being applied to that back area here. We want to kind of minimize that. I also do have that area light as well, and I'm just going to rotate this. And with this, we're going to create those cool highlights that you see within the reference here. So I'm just going to kind of bring it over to the area here. And you can see within the render view that light here. And then I'm just going to reduce down that spread, and look at that. That is going to give us exactly what we're looking for. And then again, I'm just going to kind of warm up that lights by bringing in a slightly warm color there. And so that is looking pretty good. I'm just going to increase it to 4 here, and kind of let the render view render that a little bit. And yeah, that looks pretty good. I'm just going to copy and paste and bring this other light over, and then forward slightly, and bring this down. And I'm just going to bring this back here. and then kind of a little bit more on those cabinets and up. And as I'm doing this, I'm just kind of looking at the reference here and just trying to achieve the same highlights that we see in the reference. Just going to rotate this a bit. Bring this down to 2. And then just kind of reduce down that spread. To about there. That looks pretty good here. Just going to rotate that slightly. And yeah, looking at the reference, that is very similar here. So that is looking pretty good. Next up, I'm going to just turn those off here real quick so we can kind of see the viewport a little bit better here. I'm just going to grab that spotlight and increase the exposure here. Cool. So next up, I'm going to copy and paste here. And then I'm just going to solo this, and then I'm going to bring this over. And if you're looking at the reference, if you look kind of near the table, we have this really nice light that's coming in. That seems like from the window, or maybe from another source from a different room. But either way, we have this really nice highlight here. So I'm trying to kind of recreate that here underneath the table here. And so this seems to not be working. Let me just rotate this and just kind of see what's going on here. And then I'm just going to save it real quick and just solo this area. I'm going to copy and paste here, grab these, and then we're just going to just include our floor here. Cool. So immediately within the render view, you can see that highlight there. So that is looking pretty good. And then I'm just going to take those lights and kind of push that up near the window, just to kind of recreate that nice highlight here that we have in the reference. So that is looking pretty good. It's starting to come together, which is always a fun feeling here. So next up, I'm just going to kind of check these lights here, and then this one needs to be slightly brighter here. Just going to kind of kick that up. And then I'll just kind of readjust that UV length on our wood there. And really, I'm just looking at this area just because I want to make sure that we have a nice light here, but it still kind of remains a little dark in that area, which is what the reference calls for. So looking pretty good. So I'm going to turn that off, turn this one and that one off. So cool. All right, so I'm just going to hop back into grayscale real quick, type in black, and we're going to bring in this black color both for our table and then also for some of the items on this countertop as well too. So, and then of course kind of bring in a silver, and this silver is going to be pretty nice for our oven here. So we'll apply that to our oven and kind of get going on the rest of this scene here. So I'm just going to apply that black and then apply that silver, and immediately after applying that silver, you get this nice highlight or just kind of interaction within the render view here with that light that's kind of bouncing off of that silver. So that's a really cool reflective look there. So, and then of course just applying this black to a few of these burners here, and yeah, that is looking pretty good here. All right, so I'm gonna zoom out here, just go over to our table and just apply that same black here. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to kind of go over and just delete this We might just apply something else to our table here, but let's just leave that as is for right now. Next up, I'm just gonna zoom in here and kind of finish this off. So again, just applying that same green plaster to our cabinets here. Cool. So I'm going to zoom out and we're going to kind of play with this island a little bit more here. So again, apply that same copper color to some of our cabinets here. And of course here I can make the cabinets a little bit more high quality, but whenever creating a big scene like this with a lot of vegetation, I always get personally nervous that I'm going to put too much detail within the scene here and then eventually I can't render it out. So I always want to kind of balance it between, of course, representing it properly, but at the same time, not going too overboard just to make sure that I can kind of render it at the end of the day. And that's always frustrating too, when you spend so much time kind of working on a project and you really can't render it out because of the level of detail that you have within the scene here. So of course, you kind of have to create the scene to your machine's capabilities. So I try to kind of represent it right, but at the same time, kind of save up a little bit of space or memory in general, just to make sure that we can kind of render this out here. So next up, I'm just going to apply this copper to the bottom of our island here. And then same thing with these legs as well. And then, yeah, if you see in the render view, that is kind of giving off that blue color there. So I'm just going to hit undo. And then I'm just going to apply this one here. And you still get a little blue, but that's pretty good there. So we'll kind of keep that. I'll just zoom in here and apply this color to some of these rings here. All right, so next up, I'm just going to kind of zoom out here, bring in another spotlight, rotate this, bring this back, and immediately we get this nice highlight within the render view here. And so as I'm kind of rotating this and adjusting this, you can see how it interacts within the render view. And then what I'm going to do is just decrease that intensity and just kind of see how that light interacts with that material here. And so how that light interacts with this material here. And so I'm just going to change the type to more of an area lights. And then again, just kind of reduce down the size, bring this up. And with this, I'm just trying to recreate the highlights here. So if we're looking at the reference here, really, we're just trying to recreate some of those highlights here. And so with this area lights, we're going to have a little bit more control of what those highlights look like. And so of course, by reducing the intensity and reducing that spread, we can get that nice highlight here. So that is gonna help us out quite a bit here. And so, of course, just kind of playing around with the intensity here. And really with this, I'm just kind of waiting for the render view to see exactly how that looks. I'm going to copy and paste, reduce down the size, and then just kind of create the extra highlight near the bottom. And then I'm just going to shrink that down, bring that up. Now I'm going to copy and paste here, just bring this up, shrink this down, and kind of keep that in that area there, just because we have a slightly stronger highlight at the very top there. It is very subtle, but I just want to try to get that as close as possible. Next, I'm going to copy and paste, bring this over, and then just kind of adjust it here. Just going to kind of bring this back and rotate this slightly, just because this highlight is kind of curved a little bit. So we're just going to kind of do that, and then I'll copy and paste this one at the bottom and just kind of play around with this look here. And then I'll copy and paste again, bring this over. And really, I'm just looking to see what those highlights look like as it's kind of rendering out. While it's rendering out as well, I'm just checking my reference just to make sure that we are looking pretty good here. So, all right, so next up, I'm going to copy and paste here, and I'm just going to move the camera off to this side here. We're going to rotate this 90 degrees. And then we're just going to bring this back. And really what we're going to do is we're going to create that nice large highlight here that you see within the reference. So I'm just going to kind of bring this over and bounce to the middle area and just increase the size here. And then I'm just going to push this light against here a little bit more. And then we're going to rotate this just slightly here, bring this up, and then I'll increase the size there and somewhat reduce this down. And then of course, just adjust this angle, bring this over. Cool. So next up, I'm going to turn off all those lights just so we can have somewhat of a better view in our viewport here. And so this is looking pretty good. So you can see we applied a lot of our color and we applied a lot of our different lights here. So this is looking pretty good here. Of course, let's hop back in, try and see if we can find a copper color here, play with. Just going to delete that, type in gold. And that one could be interesting here. I'm going to bring this in, give it a quick save. And then, yeah, we'll just try to apply this on the top. And immediately that's, that's not it. So we're just going to undo that. Let me apply this one, see how that looks. Nope. Let me go back here. Next up, I'm going to bring in this rose gold here. And then just kind of apply it to our lights. And that still isn't working here. So let me just go into our Redshift library here. And actually this one could look pretty good, that glass color. Let me see. And this liquid wine would look pretty good as well too. And then I'm just going to bring in this other copper here. Cool. So I'm gonna exit out here, apply that copper, and apply it to the rest. And then I'm just going to use that wine color for the glass here, just because in our reference we do have that nice kind of a yellow look to our glass there, so that's going to represent that nicely. And then we'll probably have to play around with the rest of this light here just to see what kind of look we can get. I'm just going to delete that entirely here, and then I'm just going to apply that glass to the rest of this here, and then same with all of these. Cool. I'm going to give it a quick save here, jump back into my library. I'm going to grab this gold here. And then just apply it to the top. And then pretty much the rest of this light as well. And that's given us a nice look here. And then I'll do the same thing with this other one here. Zoom in a bit and just apply that. And then I'm just going to apply that same gold onto the chain here. And then I'm just waiting for the render view to settle down here just so I can kind of see what that gold looks like. And it's looking pretty good, so I'm just going to move on to this third one here. Apply the gold. And then same thing with this light, just apply this color. All right, so I'm just looking at the render view here just to kind of see what that looks like, and we are getting pretty close to the overall look, so this is pretty exciting here. Of course, I can't leave copper alone. I'm going to look for another copper and a brass color here just to see if I'm just missing something in general. And then I'm going to apply that here. And then same here as well. And then I'm just going to go into our object manager here and see where that ring is. I think it's this one here, so I'm going to apply it, and it was. So of course, like I said before, if you keep your object manager organized, you don't have to guess, and you can probably find your assets a little bit better. So don't do what I do and just kind of leave it messy. Yeah, make sure you kind of keep it organized, and you can kind of find your assets a little bit better there. So cool, we are looking pretty good so far. All right, so next up we should work on this table here. So I'm just going to actually, let's hop into Redshift here, see if we can a cool color for this. Let me see. And this metal color is pretty good. Of course, I know a table's not going to be metal, but it's gonna give us that same look that we're looking for. So it's a nice dark color here, and it really doesn't have too much glossiness to it. So it's gonna kind of represent more of like a painted wood, I would imagine. So that is looking pretty good there. And then of course just applying this black color to the rest of these chairs, and we're just going to kind of see what the render view looks like. And yeah, that's pretty good. I'm going to hop into Redshift again, and then we're just going to look at a few of these plants here. We'll actually bring this one in. And of course, if you're looking at the reference, we do have some plants around the scene. Of course, this is not going to be the exact plant here, but this is pretty close to our reference here. What we can do here is just increase the size and then kind of rotate this a bit and bring this over. And really what we're going to do is just kind of model it to our perspective. And so it necessarily doesn't have to be in the middle, but if we can have it kind of in a good direction or in a good way that is aesthetic or in a good way that looks nice within our perspective, we can always kind of cheat a little bit by kind of bringing this off to the side here. So cool, that looks good here. Next up, I'm going to just go over to our countertop here, and we have a few of these assets here. So I'm just going to increase the size of this one, rotate it slightly, and then just bring this over and just increase the size again. And then I'm just going to apply this marble color here. Next up, I'm going to type in glass, and we're going to look for a nice glass. And I'm just going to apply that here to this one. And really with this, I'm looking at the reference and just trying to identify what each of these materials look like as far as just the overall look goes, and then just trying to find those materials within Redshift or even Grayscale to try to recreate that same look here. So I'm just going to copy and paste that one and kind of move that to the back, and that looks good. I'm going to hop into Grayscale, grab this abstract color, of course give it a quick save, and apply that color to that bowl there. And then this green will go onto this bottle here. And then we need to find a cool looking marble, or just a few different marble colors in general for a few of these bowls and cups here. So just going to bring some of these in here. Now I'm going to zoom in and then just start applying some of these colors here. Hop back into Redshift, scroll down, and this copper is going to be a pretty good one compared to our reference. So it has more of that green copper look there, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to apply more of a glass texture to this one. hop back into grayscale and try to find something else here. Let's see. Just looking at a few different colors. This part is kind of fun too, just kind of hunting down a few different colors. And so I'm just going to apply that white to some of our plates and to some of our other items. But yeah, like I said, this is a lot of fun to kind of hunt down these different colors and kind of find the right color here. So of course, there's plenty of different ways of getting colors, not just within Redshift or grayscale, but there's so many different tools and assets out there that you can kind of use and play around with. Of course, there is a lot of people playing around with a Substance Painter and just creating their own assets within that, but you can kind of play around with whatever you like. Of course, I try to show you guys what is pretty much available for either just standard Redshift owners or even people that may dabble into some sort of third party like Grayscale Gorilla or Quixel Bridge or anything like that. So I try to go for more of the more common options, just in case we don't have access to any of the other ones for any sort of reason. So next up, we're going to play around with this tall vase here. And so what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this. So if you're looking at the reference, this has a nice gold edge both at the bottom and the top here. And so we're going to recreate that by just kind of deleting some of this asset. So what I'm going to do is completely remove the portions where it should be glass. So I'm just going to delete that here, and same with this back portion. And then about here, and then I'm just going to highlight and delete all of this. So what we'll have for this portion is the areas where it's supposed to be gold, and then that other asset that we brought in that was copied from this one, that's going to retain that glass look. So we're going to achieve that same look rather quickly with a pretty fast method here. So just delete the rest of this. So that is looking good. I'm just going to grab this asset here and apply this gold. Now I'm going to turn on this other one and then apply that glass. So that gives us a nice look there. So that is looking pretty good. Of course, give it a quick save, because if you don't, it's going to crash immediately. Next up, we're going to go into Redshift. We'll just try to find a cool light bulb and kind of adjust it to our lights here. So actually, I think this one is looking pretty good. So we'll just bring in that one here, and then I'll bring this over, zoom in a bit, and then I'll bring in a cylinder, just shrink that down and kind of bring this over. And then just bring this over to the actual light. Reduce this, kind of zoom in here. So the cylinder is going to be pretty much this light holder. And then of course we have the bulb which illuminates the light here. So what I'll probably do is I'll probably just kind of play around with this off screen just to make sure that I can get the correct look here. And then what we'll do is we'll just hop back here and I'll kind of show you what I came up with. All right, so jumping back in here. So we have some of these lights here. So what I did was I just kind of shrunk down that cylinder. I grabbed a area light, made that a mesh, and applied that to our light bulb here. So it looks like the light bulb is actually emitting some sort of light here. And then of course, what I'm going to do is just copy and paste. And then if we're looking at the reference here, we do kind of have a cylinder as well too. So I'm just going to bring in this cylinder and just adjust these to the lights.
So this seems like what is actually kind of holding these lights in place here. And so I'm just going to kind of do that here and just make this somewhat in the middle of these lights. Of course, you can also achieve this with a redshift matrix, but we are doing this way today. So I'm just going to kind of rename this null here. And really, I'm just going to grab all of these, put this in the null, zoom out a bit, give it a quick save, or it will be deleted forever. And then I'm just going to go in and turn off these lights here within the render view. And that just kind of lights up the scene there. I'm just going to copy and paste and bring the same set over. Now, of course, I'm just kind of playing with the camera just to make sure that that is in the right spot there. Of course, copy and paste again and bring this over. Let's see. I'm going to bring this over a little bit more. And then I'm just going to widen this out. Same with these as well. Again, this is a balance of representing the scene correctly, but at the same time, not investing a whole bunch of detail into this, just to make sure that we can actually render this out here. So it's just kind of a balancing game. Of course, if you have a pretty good GPU with a lot of VRAM, I'm sure you can kind of pack in a bunch of detail into the scene. But with me, I'm a little limited. So of course, I'm trying to make sure that I get the scene right, but at the same time, just not invest too heavy into the scene. So we're getting to the spot where we are wrapping up. So I'm just going to take the next few minutes here and just kind of orbit around the scene and make sure that everything is kind of to scale. I need to just grab all these and copy and paste and bring this over. And then if you can see here, this didn't really copy correctly. So what I'll have to do is just kind of delete all these broken ones and just recreate this here. So I'm just going to copy and paste, bring this down, and we'll just kind of recreate that same look here. And then I'll just kind of bring this up just to make sure that it is somewhat more realistic here. Now I'm going to hop back into our perspective just to see what that looks like. And I can kind of delete the rest of those just because the camera is not going to see the rest of those. So that is fine there. Next up, what I need to do is, if you can look at the reference, we have almost like a faucet area. So it seems like a faucet area where you could fill up a few different pots here with water. So what I'm going to do is go into Redshift here, type in kit bash, and they have a lot of these free kit bash assets here. So I'm just going to try to find a few different pipes here that, like I said before, kind of represents it somewhat appropriately here. But of course, this is not going to make technical sense. But really, I'm just trying to get the same idea. The reason why I'm doing this is, at this point, my render view is acting somewhat sluggish, so I want to make sure that I can actually render this out for you guys. So we're just going to grab a few different shapes here. We're going to strip the color off of it, and then we're just going to recreate some of those pipes here real quick. So, and then of course just rotate these. And adjust these to the wall. And then what I can also do is just bring in a cylinder as well and bring that over. And again, we're just getting the same sort of idea or same concept here. And really too, it's nice that we can kind of cheat this because you could see it within our reference here, but you necessarily don't have a very good like level of detail within the image here. So we can kind of cheat the look a little bit here. So again, I'm just going to take the next few minutes here and really just kind of adjust some of these cylinders and the assets here to kind of recreate that same look. So cool. So that is looking pretty good here. So what I'm going to do is just apply this color to our asset here. And then just because it's a more of a darker bronze look here within the reference, so I'll just kind of apply these to the rest here. Cool, so we are looking pretty good here. Our scene looks quite similar to our reference here. So again, just going to do a few minor fixes here, but other than that, that's pretty much it for the colorization process of the scene here. Let's hop into the wrap-up section and see how we did here. All right, so hopping into the wrap-up section here, we have our reference here, we have our render, and then of course we have our render from our previous episode of how we modeled it. And so just to start off with the actual model portion, I think we represented the scene quite well. I will say what we did do is we kind of elongated or just kind of widened the scene out. And so if we're looking at the reference, the scene is quite narrow here. And so I think what happens is with our camera that we use, we end up putting this into like a 2K resolution, which creates this box look within our camera. And so that kind of elongates or just widens out the scene a little bit more. So a lot of our islands specifically and some of our other objects here just kind of look a little bit more elongated versus our reference. So maybe in the future here, if we can kind of identify a good boundary for our scene and kind of make sure that we don't elongate things, that will kind of help us represent this a little bit better here. Of course, the biggest thing here is the level of detail. So if we look at our new render here with all of our colors, we did get some of our colors down. I think one of the better ones is definitely the floor here. Of course, if we look at our reference, we have just like a better overall look of our highlights here, where in our kitchen render that we got, it's a little bit more blocky and less organic looking. So maybe just kind of playing around with the softness aspect of that light so it doesn't look like it's immediately cutting off. So that's something to kind of remember in the future. And then our green that we achieved within the render isn't necessarily the same green. I will say myself, it's a pretty nice looking green, but not as kind of muted as what we have in the reference. And then, of course, just the overall level of detail. Of course, the reference looks a lot more high quality, a lot more realistic, where this one is, you can kind of tell it's more of a 3D render here. I will say in general, we did capture just the overall essence of this, but we do have a lot of opportunities to kind of work with. But that's what's so fun about this process, is it's going to kind of take practice and take time to kind of really hone in your skills or like your abilities to kind of recreate something here. So by doing this, I always learn something new. So I know for next time to kind of play around with the camera a little bit more, and then also play around with our lighting just to make sure we're kind of representing that a little bit better, and we kind of keep the perspective and the narrowness a little bit more versus widening out the scene here. So I would say for our proportions here and just like the overall look here, I think the proportions are slightly off. And I think that is why we had an extra amount of cabinets within our render here versus the reference here. I think in the reference, the cabinets and even the countertop is a little bit smaller than what we did. So I think what I did was I just expanded the size and made it a little bit larger than what it was. But for next time, we'll just kind of have to adjust for that. But overall, as far as the positives go, like I said, we did capture the overall essence. I'll say we did a pretty good job with kind of recreating that same look as far as like what's going on the outside. So we have kind of like a muted tree and like a nature scene outside. Obviously it's a backyard area here, but I feel like we did a pretty good job with kind of recreating that. And then other than that, I will say we had a pretty good attempt with a lot of our highlights here. So both the highlights that are on the island and then also against the floor and the wall here, we did a pretty good job. I think it is a little strong and we might have to kind of soften that up a bit, but that's all part of the process. And but of course, this was my first render here with all of the colors, so of course I can always kind of look at this render, go back in and adjust it if need be. But of course with Resculpted, I only have about 1 or 2 shots to kind of get it right here, and this is probably the best representation at this time that I could do. But yeah, that was pretty much it for our transitional kitchen. Let me know what you guys think. I had a lot of fun with this one. I think this one had a lot of different stuff within the scene. We were working with a lot of different depth. We were working with a lot of different materials and just kind of things within the scene in general. So I think this has probably been the most complex scene within this Resculpted series, and it was a lot of fun. So again, let me know what you guys think. If you want to see something in particular, feel free to shoot it down in the comment section. If you like this or you thought this was helpful, feel free to give me a like, and that lets me know if this is something you guys kind of want to see, or if you want me to kind of pivot to something else. Again, just let me know. But other than that, that's pretty much it for this video today. You guys have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.